Sup shooters, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands. Welcome to a video about the 2080 Ti and why I think it's trash. Not as a product, because as a product it's actually pretty solid. As a product, let's just check out the 2080 Ti through the NVIDIA side, shall we? Now I can see here they're comparing the 1080 Ti to the 2080 Ti, which I guess is fair. The memory speed's slightly higher because using GDR6, and you've got a slightly higher boost clock on the Founders Edition. It's interesting that they choose an OC here. I'm assuming that's because the Founders Edition has been overclocked, or it's like a higher clock. So already we see that the difference between the 1080 Ti and the 2080 Ti is that it has these RTX ops. It basically can do ray tracing. That's it. In ray tracing, let's have a look at ray tracing. Ray tracing performance. Battlefield 5 shows how demanding NVIDIA's new tech really is. If we look through here, so we can see ray tracing performance in Battlefield 5, and we've got the 2080 Ti with an average of 66.2. Is that the lowest? Oh, the average is 91. Okay, so the average is 91 frames. You know, with just 2080, you've got 78 frames. And you've got a 2070 DXR. So these are, I suppose, just the technical. The DXR is the ray tracing, and the 2080 Ti takes out the top mark here on ultra settings with 91 average frames. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit for people who might struggle to see those. There you go. So I got that's 100. It's kind of hard to read, isn't it? You're going to just have to take my word for it when this is 91. With the low ray tracing, we can see we've got 107 frames. But this is what I'm interested in, because if I was going to get a 2080 Ti, I would probably be getting it for this number here. Because this number, 187.4 frames, that's my jam. Because you see, I've got a 1080p 144Hz monitor. And the problem with this ray tracing performance down here is, the problem with these guys is they aren't up to 144 Hz. So I'm kind of screwed, aren't I? Kind of screwed if I want to be able to use ray tracing with my high refresh rate monitor. And this is on 920/1080. Yeah, if this is this for me, like if we Google a 2080 Ti in New Zealand, you know, we can see here, if I was going to buy one, this is the 2080, not the 2080 Ti, but the 2080 I've got my eye on at the moment. It's $1,600 just for a 2080 in New Zealand, and I realize the prices are relative. This is all New Zealand dollars. To put it in perspective, this is actually more expensive than my first car that I bought. There's $1,600, and I've currently got a 1080 that I'll talk about a bit later on that I got for $1,000, and at the moment my 1080 does very well in terms of performance. I am recording, aren't I good? But getting back to this, the 2080 is this. If we look for a 2080 Ti, you know, going through here, shopping, just if we go to 2080 Ti, we can see we've got just the turbo, just the blower fan is $2,400 from my app. This Asus Dual 2080 Ti is $2,500. So there's a $1,000 increase in price between the 2080 Ti and the 2080. Now, if we compare performance, can we go to user benchmark? Because I know a lot of people have been going. Here we go, GPU user benchmark. So we can see here, this is first and fifth. And to be fair to NVIDIA, there is actually a 35%, 41 increase. So the average bench, I can see here there's probably about a 30% increase in price, but the problem with that 30% increase in price is that this card is actually about 70% more expensive, so the scaling of value between these two is poor. You can see here, you know, with this average bench of 149, let's round that to 150 and this to 200. This here, this is about 35% more powerful according to the bench. But this card is 70% more expensive. So already, like, I'm disinclined towards buying a 2080 Ti I'd probably buy one of these. Now, going back to the 2080s actually, we can see the 2080 at DX12 on Ultra, that you know, it's, and of course this is DX12, so there's a bit of a performance hit. Maybe we should roll with these. So we'll go with DX12 instead. We can see DX12, 143.8 with a 2080 Ti. That is ultra settings on 1080p. So if you put it down to high, you'd probably get about 210, 220 frames. And with a 2080, you'd probably get about 180 frames. And even a 2070 would probably get about 160, 170 frames on anything below ultra. Or I'd say probably high would be 170. So I guess you could argue that if you had these settings on like high, the 2080 with even low ray tracing might be able to get up to high settings on 140 at 1080p. But the problem here, I shouldn't have to pay $2,500 for a card that can basically hit 144 Hz on 1080p using high settings, because I've already got a card at the moment, my 1080, which can hit 144 Hz FPS on, I know they're different, it can hit 144 FPS on most games on high without ray tracing, and the only difference between ray tracing and non-ray tracing is that you don't have the pretty reflections and the object permanence, I guess, which some people are appreciating, where if you you know, if something's blocking your display, the reflection doesn't stop. If we look at FPS at 1440p, you can see here with DX11 is very performance. Actually, before I continue, I want to say look at the 1080 Ti. The 1080 Ti is actually edging out the 2080 Ti on DX12. And what I would say there is that maybe people who already have a 1080 Ti will experience better performance over the 2080 Ti on DX12, and maybe some people won't mind that. Maybe some people will just play DX11 and it'll be as efficient as it needs to be for them. Because I think it's important to remember that if you're buying a 2080 Ti, you're looking for the best of the best, you know. But I think the reason I'm saying that the 2080 Ti is kind of trash, or that it is trash, is because I look at the performance. Already we've talked about how the price comparison to quality 3 years of benchmark is it's not great, is it? You know. And then there's also the exclusivity of the product, because a lot of people went ahead and bought 2080 Ti's thinking they get 4K 60 for ray tracing, which I firmly believe that a lot of people would have bought the 2080 Ti expecting 4K 60 frames. Genuinely sure that would have been the case with people, because they advertised 4K 60 gaming. If I go to their web series, where is this? There was a chart. You can see here, right? This is what I mean. So 4K 60 FPS, you can see here they're talking about ray tracing and all these other features, and I don't think they actually mentioned that the ray tracing would have a performance hit at the time. I might be wrong, but I don't remember hearing about the performance hit from ray tracing until they were testing it at some of the showcases where they showed that there were issues with ray tracing. This is misleading and disingenuous. This is misleading because it's saying, hey, if you buy a RTX 2080, a game that can do ray tracing, a card that can do ray tracing, you're going to get 4K 60 FPS. And as shown here, you can see that's not the case. If we go through 1440p first, right, you can see here, you can see that this 2080 Ti down here with low ray tracing is hitting 86 and 61. And it just gets kind of worse from there. Like, you're not really getting anything. This isn't really playable at 1440p in a shooting game. And I watched Jay's 2 cents video on this just released, and maybe on the Friday, Saturday, I'll link it in the video. I left a scathing comment on it. Like, I won't watch any of his videos again, because his rationale for why he thinks this is cool completely just epitomizes the stupidity that a lot of people have shown towards ray tracing, and kind of the dying at the sword they put in the ground. Like, and because I wasn't afraid of saying I thought he was wrong, because I don't think he'll listen anyways, because I think when you're as big as Jay's 2 cents or a lot of the other tech YouTube channels, you're less likely to give a shit about one subscriber things. Though I would happily maintain my point of view that I put forward, that I think, that the reasons I put it in. Anyways, I'll link it in there, and if you can find my comment, then feel free to have a look at that. But I look at this and I think, right, so at 1440, go away. At 1440p, we can see that this is basically Dunskins. The only one hitting 60 frames is the 2080 Ti, and if we go to ray tracing performance at 4K, we can, and this is on Ultra, of course, which I think don't get me started on Ultra. We can see the 2080 Ti won't even hit, and it won't even hit 60 frames at Ultra 4K. The 1080 Ti is a card which can hit 60 frames at 4K on Ultra, but with ray tracing, a card that is like twice as expensive as I saw cards retailing, 1080 Ti's retailing for before NVIDIA stopped selling them. This is ridiculous. Which of these cards, the 2080 Ti, 2080 or 1080 Ti, are hitting 60 frames here with ray tracing? They're not. And the reason that they're not hitting 60 frames is because the technology isn't developed enough yet. I think it's fantastic that they're playing around with this. I don't think people should be tricked into thinking that this is what they're going to get when they buy these cards. And that's why I think that the card is trash. The card, it's either NVIDIA is being deliberately manipulative and deceitful and is showing just a general disregard for the good faith of its clients, and they're just showing how little they give a shit about what their clients, their tolerances of their clients, or the cards are just awful. And I think the reason that they're showing ultra benchmarks is because these cards are so fucking expensive. They are so expensive. Again, this card costs more than a lot of entry level. It costs more than a lot of entry level computers, even in New Zealand. And these are gaming computers, complete rigs. Like, if I go to Mighty Ape, I quite like Mighty Ape. If I go to Mighty Ape and I check out some of their computers, just to give you a perspective, where's something that costs as much as a GTX 2080 Ti? Probably this here. You get a 1070 graphics card plus all the rest of this for less than a 2080 Ti. And this game, well, I mean, the mistake they've made is including Fallout 76, but that's beside the point. Would you rather have like an entire gaming PC that can definitely, like, this would definitely play most games at 1080p on high settings, at least 60 frames. Would you rather have the entire PC that can do that, or a graphics card where you need an entire rest of the rig, including a CPU that won't bottleneck your GPU? Which would you rather have? And I think that's where I'm coming to the point where there is a distinct lack of value to me in this thing. This has value because if I go to CPU, bottlenecker, there we go, this is my thing. This is more my thing. So a 2080 would result in no bottleneck. So I'm very likely going to get one of these because I don't want to have bottleneck in my game. That's really interesting. If you think that there's worth in this card, it'll purely be to your personal preference. Like, say I was to get a 2080 Ti and do this. There is more of a bottleneck with a 2080 Ti than a 1080 Ti. Isn't that funny? Isn't that kind of funny when you think about it? That means that there's really no difference for me. There's really no difference for me. It's crazy because people look at Ryzen processors and think, oh, they're not really good gaming CPUs, but they would destroy a 1080 according to this. So, like, looking at this, you've seen that there's probably really no difference between me getting a 2080 and a 2080 Ti. There is, again, there's a little bit 2080 Ti user benchmark. If I go here, you see this, and you'll think, right, 2080 versus 2080 Ti, there's a 35% difference, but I just can't justify this increase in price. Now, I guess you're wondering here, well, okay, is there much of a difference in this? this is where it gets interesting. I'd be getting probably a 20% increase in performance for $1,600. So this is another point, I guess. Before we get too heated about me thinking that the 2080 Ti is trash, it comes with a caveat in that it depends on your position. If you're wanting to buy this, maybe that's not the best decision to make. If you're buying it for a new PC, you could get gaming performance with a hell of a lot less, but if you are going between this and this, now that's where it gets interesting, because look at the performance increase. Look at the performance increase. It's phenomenal. Now, here's the one reason why I may consider a 2080 Ti, and it's because of this. The 2080 Ti is phenomenally more powerful than my 1080. Looking at the bottleneck here, graphics card and processor will work great. A shit ton less bottleneck than I've got at the moment, should I say. And if we compare like 20% increases in value for $1,600, for $2,600 I get a 60% increase. But then it's all about like, what is the relative performance? And again, that's difficult to tell, isn't it? Because if you have a look at this, right, 60% increases, does this mean that I'm going to get 60% more frames? And the answer is probably yes. The answer is probably yes, I will get 60% more frames. Right. So then if we go back to this, if we go find those charts again, does that mean that, you know, if I want to play Ultra, the 2080 Ti is what I should aim for? And I'd say, because if you divide that by 1.6, that's about 50, right? Yeah, I'd say so. Say let's divide that by 1.6 because we want to have a baseline for the 1080 and then put it up by 60%. So let's just say the baseline is 50 FPS and Battlefield 5 ray tracing performance. But this is without ray tracing, right? A DX11. So what I'm saying is I could probably get 4K if I lowered the settings enough. So even with my 1080 Ti that's causing a 1080 that's causing massive bottleneck, I could still probably get away with playing Battlefield 5 in 4K at 4K with like high settings, and I could probably get a 60 FPS if I wanted to. But then it's remembering that I don't actually play 4K for this reason. You know, don't know if you guys know about it. The distance. So if we have 1920 by 1080, and so this is a 24.5 inch display that I'm using, right? So this becomes retina at over 38 inches. So I can be 38 inches away and it'll look totally smooth. This is this here. So say the average gamer plays 1080p, right? 1080p 60. Most people will benefit from this chart here if we're looking at pixel density, because let's just say we're at 2560 by 1440. You need to be 74 centimeters away to see a distance or difference. Like you need to be closer than 74 centimeters to notice a difference. The individual pixels itself. So for people who are within that 74 centimeters, you're gonna notice the pixel density and stuff like that. But if you're further than 74 centimeters away from the monitor, then it's gonna look really silky smooth, and you're not gonna be able to tell the difference between, well, you're definitely gonna be able to tell the difference between that and 4K, because 4K, you need to be about 50 centimeters away to be able to tell the difference between 4K and otherwise. So if that makes sense, what I'm trying to say is that most people won't even really see a difference between, like that are close to their computers, probably won't even see a difference between 3840 and 2560 or 1440p, 4K and 1440p. They probably won't see a difference anyways, because of the fact of this kind of actual science, which dictates that people, like our eyes just cannot see a difference like that. I guess I've been grumpy at this for about half an hour now. Should a card advertised for ray tracing that advertised 4K 60 that was its purpose, right? That was its purpose. It was meant to be 4K 60, and 2080 Ti was supposed to be faster than that. Like, and the reason I stick to my guns on that is because, 4K 60, like, 1080 Ti could get ultra settings sometimes. I'm sure the 1080 Ti could get ultra settings on games higher than 60 FPS. The card itself with ray tracing is trash, and you would know this because there's a lot of people talking smack about it, and then there's people like J's2Cents who talk about it as if, oh, it's just people being angry because they like to be angry. It's fucking not. It makes me angry because there's lots of people that got tricked into buying shit that didn't exist and that doesn't exist. That's what makes me angry, and I don't think everyone is that fucking simple, Jay. Some people get pissed off when others get hurt, tricked, and they're trust abused by some fuckwits who have no competition and they're not obligated to be able to provide a better product. They just feed the hype machine, and they just get the rot sets in, as it does with companies like Apple recently, where they got a bit too big for their boots and they've had to scale back production because they left the door open for competitors. AMD, while they can't compete at the moment, if NVIDIA keeps this shit up like they have with 2080 Ti, I imagine that AMD will step in and make something better. They have to, or someone else will, because there's an opening in the market for it. The market is like Intel is getting into it as well. There is a mass of the public screaming for a better option than this. We just want to be able to game it what people say you'll get. If NVIDIA had released a card that could do ray tracing at 4K 60, nobody would give a shit. Everyone would be fucking smacking them on the back saying, fuck yeah, well done. But the problem is that people got tricked into buying something that doesn't exist. NVIDIA are totally responsible for it. This is not where this is. This is not above the 60 line, and this is not here. This is misleading as fuck anyways, because it's saying that the 1080 Ti can't get up to 60 FPS. What does this fucking mean, NVIDIA? NVIDIA could have easily redeemed themselves by putting out the DLSS, which is meant to improve performance, but they haven't fucking done it. I've had issues with NVIDIA drivers recently as well that have been causing performance drops in my cards and shit. And while I admire NVIDIA for stuff like FastSync, which is working great with my 144Hz display, the reality is that AMD have an equivalent thing called someone needs to step in and get fucking they need to stop NVIDIA from fisting themselves, because NVIDIA have made some great devices and it's such a fucking shame. And like, can you imagine how poorly Ark Survival Evolved is going to handle fucking ray tracing? It's already enough of a shit show at the moment. Can you imagine how Ark is going to go with ray tracing? Can you imagine PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds with ray tracing? Can you imagine fucking We Happy Few with ray tracing? Final Fantasy, I couldn't even get that fucking thing to... It's just unbelievable. It's monumentally fucking stupid. Maybe NVIDIA is saying this because of what happens with DLSS. Maybe ray tracing will make DLSS, or will be better with DLSS. But even then, it's like it's only like maybe it's a 30% performance increase, but that's beside the fucking point. This was meant to be 40k FPS. And before these cards were released, I remember thinking, so what does that mean? What does 4k FPS mean? Does that mean 4k at like low settings? Does it mean at high settings? I think this is the thing. Even I fall for it. I think, right, I need to buy a new graphics card because a new gen set. Why? Why do I need to buy another one? I'm never gonna get a 4K monitor because I don't want to. I don't care about the fucking pixel density. I'm playing on a 1080p monitor at the moment. It's just fine. Maybe a 1440p monitor I'd notice something. But the problem is, I mean, if this struggles as much as it does for 4K, how in the absolute fuck are you going to justify? Like, you can't justify a 4K 120Hz monitor, especially not with ray tracing. It's just trash. It's just garbage. It's shitty. The 2080 Ti is a trash card because the people that made it just hoarded it out. It didn't do anything wrong. The 2080 Ti is a fucking marvel of innovation. It doesn't need to cost this much, but it does because people bought it, because they were tricked into it by NVIDIA, or because they were willfully ignorant of the consequences of their own actions. And everyone involved should be fucking ashamed of themselves. And I am not doing this because I think that you are wrong for buying this. I'm doing it because if you have ever fucking complained about anything NVIDIA has done with these releases where they've been misleading, every time you buy this fucking new shit or pre-order this shit, it fucking happens. Every time it happens. You are encouraging these people who have made billions of dollars to make more of these so they can make more billions of dollars, because I don't care if you have money. If you have money, you shouldn't, because I don't know how you have money if you're this fucking stupid with your purchasing decisions. Actually give me your fucking money so that I can do something productive with it. Like put it into an investment fund to protect you from yourself. If you are going to defend, this is for people who are going to defend the 2080 Ti at the price range it is, for the performance it has. I get that it's a luxury product, but it does not perform how they thought it was going to. NVIDIA has lied about its ability to be able to follow through on its services, and if you're endorsing this behavior, you are making, as NVIDIA is basically a monopoly at the moment, you are making the video card part of the industry shit for everyone. You are responsible for it. You, the person who buys the stuff in advance, doesn't think of the consequences of that. And I am not envious of you, because I have money to buy a 2080 Ti at the moment, but I haven't, and the reason I haven't is because I think it's a piece of shit because of what NVIDIA has done to it. And you might think, hey, this guy's being really mean, or this guy's overreacting. If you cannot even begin to imagine how sick I am of aggressively apathetic people telling me not to be mad about stuff. I get enough of my own personal life. I don't need someone on the internet telling me that I'm wrong about something when you cannot bring forward a superior argument. The only thing I can imagine someone saying is, look, it's new technology, it's expensive. Cool. Don't fucking advertise it at 60 FPS at 4K then if you can't fucking bring it. Don't do it. Don't make it, because you haven't done what you said you were going to do. And there's no ability to hold these people accountable in the first place because they've made their money, because people got conned by the 20 series graphics cards. You need to just fucking think about what you're doing if you are endorsing NVIDIA creating these things. They artificially blow up the prices of these cards so that people would buy the 1080 Ti's that were already too expensive because of the fucking mining bullshit. Have people forgotten what happened with the cryptocurrency mining in the late 2017? Did people fucking... I can't actually believe I'm saying this, but I think that people deserve to get screwed by NVIDIA if they are refusing to look at their history and make sensible purchasing decisions. Because there are literally... Like, if I go to YouTube, right? 2080 Ti, right? YouTube. If I go to YouTube, like, can I actually go to YouTube? Can I go to YouTube right now? Ray tracing tested. On off. And RTX a disaster. I mean, some of this stuff's really interesting. Let's review. And I'm like no better than this guy, but fuck, I don't know what else to do, man. Because, like, I genuinely am just so sick of people bitching about this shit. As much as you are. But to make people notice, you've got to bitch about it. You've got to just continue. You can't just let NVIDIA fucking pretend like they didn't do anything wrong You just let them walk away from this. And I am unhappy with this technology, and I think that it's been a complete shit show and a waste of time and resources, and the only people that have benefited are NVIDIA. Actually, let's just have a look. How much money? 9.714 billion. Because they don't care about you. They care about this. And they care about this. And they care about this. And they will continue to care about that until people stop buying their products and until they're actually held accountable for the fact that they're just an illegitimate heir to the throne of the fucking I don't even know. What a shame.